Episode 5, The Price of Knowing. 1. Debrief at Sea. 2 days passed as the Calliope sailed north, their heading guided by coordinates transmitted from an unnamed U.S. naval vessel. The mood on board was subdued, each member of the expedition lost in private thoughts. They had witnessed wonders that could redefine science and spirituality. Now they were leaving under a forced vow of silence. Jamie spent hours typing cryptic notes into her personal laptop, carefully encrypting them. She doubted the intelligence officials would do a deep search once they landed, but she took no chances. She used advanced ciphers that Dan had taught her, nothing bulletproof against the full might of government cryptanalysis, but hopefully enough to hide her records for now. Meredith delved into the plant samples they had collected earlier, analyzing them under a portable field microscope. She discovered signs of unusual alkaloid structures, but lacked the equipment to confirm their exact composition. Regardless, the facility on the island had far more sophisticated labs than she ever would. The sample was a mere shadow of the greater truth they had left behind. Miles, for his part, locked himself in the charting room, gazing at navigation maps spread across a large table. He traced their route to the island, comparing it with official sea charts. Where the island should have been, the chart remained a blank expanse of ocean. The sense of cosmic irony weighed on him, a cartographer whose greatest discovery must remain unmapped. Second, ghostly rendezvous. On the evening of the third day at sea, the radar beeped. A vessel was approaching. True to Commander Pierce's words, a U.S. Navy frigate came into view, appearing almost ghost-like in the twilight. It signaled the Calliope with a series of flashing lights. The hired captain complied, guiding the ship alongside the frigate, where lines were thrown to bring them in parallel. A short radio communique instructed them to stand by. Within minutes, a small boarding party arrived, 3 uniformed Navy personnel and 1 man in a suit, presumably an intelligence officer. They carried out a cursory inspection of the ship, scanning electronics, rummaging through living quarters. When they finished, they seemed satisfied that no contraband or official documents from the island were on board. Jamie and Dan exchanged wary glances, grateful that their encrypted files remained hidden. Intelligence officer, to Miles. We'll escort you to a U.S. port for immigration and customs procedures. From there, you'll be free to go. I trust you remember your obligations. Miles simply nodded. Words felt pointless. The naval frigate then guided them northward, though it kept a discreet distance, shadowing them until landfall. 3. Return to the mainland. A week after leaving the island, the Calliope docked in San Diego under the watchful eyes of naval personnel. Their expedition concluded much as it had begun, quietly, without fanfare, though now tinged with an oppressive secrecy. Upon disembarkation, each member of the team was ushered into a bland government building near the naval base for processing. They were separated into different rooms, questioned again by stern-faced officials. Signatures were required on additional documents reiterating the terms of confidentiality. After hours of this bureaucratic exercise, they were finally released into the late afternoon sunlight. They stood together in a parking lot, each carrying a duffel bag with personal items. Civilization roared around them, cars honking, planes overhead, people hurrying about. It felt surreal, as though they had spent an eternity in another dimension. Dan ran a hand through his hair. Dan, I can't believe we're back. Everything feels artificial now. Meredith. I know. The city looks different. I keep seeing glimpses of patterns in the sky. Jamie. So what now? We just go back to normal life? They turned to Miles, whose eyes were fixed on the horizon. He exhaled slowly. Miles. We can't unsee what we saw, but we have to be careful. Let's regroup after a short break. Maybe see if we can figure out a plan that doesn't get us thrown in a black site. They exchanged contact details, promising to stay in touch via secure channels Dan would set up. Then they parted ways, each grappling with the burden of knowledge that defied all rational boundaries. 4. Aftermath and personal turmoil. Over the following weeks, life resumed in a strange parody of normality. Miles Pendleton returned to Caltech. As expected, the department chair gave him a cold reception, demanding to know what had become of his rogue expedition. Miles offered a terse explanation about storms and inconclusive findings. Bascom seemed relieved, if still wary. However, Miles's perspective had shifted so radically that everyday academic routines felt hollow. He found himself losing interest in mundane cartographic projects. His dreams were haunted by swirling fractals and the memory of cosmic unity. Meredith Oster resumed her post at UCLA, pushing forward with oceanographic research. Yet, in every wave pattern she analyzed, she sensed a deeper resonance, a hidden frequency that reminded her of the island's electromagnetic aura. She struggled to focus on her usual tasks, the memory of the lab's advanced systems and the missing puzzle pieces gnawing at her. Jamie Rooney tried to return to her graduate program. She faked normalcy, but the Dormaline experience had awakened a latent sensitivity. Randomly, she would slip into daydreams, seeing fractal patterns overlaying reality or hearing the hum of the island's heartbeat. She continued to write in her diary in third person, not sure if it was out of habit or necessity. Perhaps it distanced her from the magnitude of what she'd lived. Dan Shirakawa buried himself in cryptography and data analytics. He used complex encryption methods to store memories of the island in symbolic form, scattering them across hidden servers. It became an obsession, a puzzle. How to preserve the truth without revealing it. In late-night coding marathons, he sometimes wept, uncertain if his hidden trove could ever be safely revealed. Carlos Esteves felt unmoored. His mechanical engineering research at Caltech suddenly seemed trivial. The illusions of normal life chafed at him. He avoided social gatherings, battling nightmares of government raids and suppressed technologies. One evening, half drunk, he confided in a close friend about life-changing experiences in the Pacific, but quickly clammed up when he sensed the friend's confusion and disbelief. 5. The wedge of doubt. Into this uneasy quiet, a new complication arose. Strange men in suits started appearing near their workplaces or on campus, sometimes making no effort to hide their presence. Occasionally, one of them might approach to ask innocuous questions or simply watch from a distance. The group deduced they were likely being surveilled to ensure compliance. Miles received a phone call one night from a blocked number. Unknown caller. Doctor. Pendleton. Good to hear your voice. Miles. Who is this? Unknown. Caller. Let's just say we're friends from the island. We want to make sure you remember your obligations. Miles, heart racing. I do. I haven't spoken to anyone. Unknown caller. We know. Keep it that way. For your sake. The line clicked off. Miles stared at the silent receiver, feeling both fear and anger. So this is what my life has become. A swirl of resentment built in him. He understood that knowledge came at a price, but the cost seemed brutally high. 6th secret meeting. Unable to bear the isolation, Miles called the others and arranged a covert gathering at a remote cabin in the San Gabriel Mountains. A few weekends later, they met there under the cover of darkness, parking their cars miles away and hiking in to avoid any trailing vehicles. Inside the rustic cabin, they lit lanterns, huddling around a wooden table. Jamie, Dan, Meredith, and Carlos wore haunted expressions. Tension crackled in the air. Miles, I couldn't keep going with everything unspoken. We need to discuss what we do next. Meredith, we're under surveillance, you know that. They'll be suspicious if we're all missing at once. Carlos, yes, but we have the data Dr. Breen gave us. We can't just bury it. This is bigger than any one government's secrecy. It's about the nature of reality itself. Jamie, What if we leak it anonymously? The world has a right to know. Maybe we can release it through some obscure channel. Dark web, cryptic forums, with all the evidence we have. Dan. The data might be traced back to us. We need multiple layers of obfuscation if we do that. And even if we manage it, can you imagine the chaos? The drug cartels alone would kill to get their hands on Domaline. Nations would scramble for the island. War could erupt. Maybe the government is right to suppress it. A hush fell as they considered the apocalyptic scenarios. Miles finally spoke. Miles, we might not be ready to blow the lid off, but we also can't just pretend it never happened. Let's store Dr. Breen's data in multiple secure places, keep it safe, keep it hidden. If something changes, if there's a sign that the world could handle this information, then we release it. Meredith. A compromise. We remain silent for now, but we don't let it vanish. Everyone nodded, though none felt truly satisfied. There was no perfect solution to the moral labyrinth they found themselves in. 7. An unexpected visitor. Late that night, as the group prepared to leave the cabin, a knock on the door startled them. Dan peered through the window and gasped. Outside stood a woman in an overcoat, hood pulled low, obscuring her face. Cautiously, Miles opened the door a crack. The woman stepped inside, revealing none other than Dr. Annalise Breen from the island. Dr. Breen, I took a risk coming here, but I had to. I couldn't stay quiet. Meredith, how did you find us? Dr. Breen, smiling faintly. I had a friend track your phone signals. I also placed a tracer in the data drive I gave you. The point is, I'm here because something big is happening on the island. They're ramping up experiments, and they're planning expansions, possibly a larger facility. It can only mean more cover-ups, more secrecy, or maybe even large-scale production of Domaline. She glanced around, gauging their reactions. Then she dropped an even bigger bombshell. Dr. Breen. I overheard some discussions among top brass. They're toying with the idea of using microdoses of Domaline on special forces units. The idea is to create super soldiers with heightened perception and reflexes. They've had some partial success, but the mental toll is catastrophic. If they make this standard practice, we could see an entire generation of psychologically shattered veterans, or worse, unleashed chaos if it leaks. Jamie clutched the edge of the table, her mind spinning. The idea of militarizing the compound that had revealed such awe-inspiring truths disgusted her. Dan put a hand on her shoulder. Miles, we have to do something, but we're barely keeping ourselves safe. Dr. Breen looked at them each in turn, a haunted determination in her eyes. Dr. Breen, the island is a ticking time bomb. If we don't act, the consequences could be global. I'm not saying we release all the data to the world, but we need a plan. Some form of leverage, a way to pressure the decision-makers to back down from weaponizing Domaline. A tense silence followed. They had crossed an invisible line. Once they conspired to resist, they became enemies of the Black Ops apparatus that controlled the island. Yet moral imperatives weighed heavily. No one at the table believed letting the government create entire squads of forcibly awakened soldiers was a benign path. 8. Inner conflicts. Over the next few hours, a heated debate ensued. Some argued for a carefully orchestrated public leak that would force oversight. Others insisted that unveiling even partial truths could spark a worldwide scramble for the plant. Dr. Breen proposed a middle path. Approach certain influential senators or journalists discreetly, gauge their willingness to investigate, and hope for a controlled exposure. Meredith. It's risky. Politicians can be compromised, or they might sensationalize the story, turning it into a fiasco. Dan. We could pick a journalist known for protecting sources, someone with a track record of integrity. Carlos. But even then, the forces we're up against are powerful. They might crush any investigation before it gains traction. At last, they settled on a cautious step. Doctor, Breen would gather more details from the island, if possible, evidence of the super soldier program. Meanwhile, Dan would set up a triple encrypted channel to a journalist they all trusted, perhaps an independent investigative reporter. If the evidence became strong enough, they would pass it along, ensuring anonymity. 9. The widening rift. As dawn approached, they realized they needed to disperse before suspicion arose. Dr. Breen insisted on returning to the island, claiming she had a window of opportunity to slip back without being noticed. The group tried to dissuade her, but she was adamant. Dr. Breen, if I vanish permanently, they'll know I defected. That places a target on my back, and on yours. It's safer if I act normal. Gather intel quietly. Jamie, this is insane. But I guess you're right. They parted ways in the early morning haze, hearts heavy with the knowledge that they were inching closer to open defiance. As they drove back to their respective lives, each felt the invisible watchers who might be trailing their steps. 10. The tidal pull of fate. In the weeks that followed, life continued under an uneasy tension. Dr. Breen managed to send sporadic coded messages indicating she was still safe, but had limited opportunities to gather conclusive proof of the super soldier program. The Watchers still hovered around the expedition members, but none made a direct move. Miles found himself drowning in a sense of foreboding. Each time he taught a class or walked across the Caltech campus, the ground felt unsteady under his feet. In idle moments, he caught himself feeling that the rationalist environment around him was a charade, and the real story of humanity, its potential for transcendence or downfall, lay hidden on that island. The memory of Dormaline's cosmic revelation remained seared into his psyche, a bittersweet reminder of what was at stake. Where it would lead them next, none could predict. They were scientists, drawn into a clandestine war over the keys to consciousness. And in the hush of the night, they each wondered, if reality is so much broader than we ever imagined, can any secret truly be contained forever?